Welcome to the garden. I'm Nicki, your host, and today at the start of this video series, we thought of giving you a little overview of what the garden is, our mission, what we stand for. And for that, we start with a little bit about the background and what led to the foundation of the garden, and our goals and ideals, and also what projects we're working on. And looking at the main question or goal we're trying to achieve or problem to solve, it's really how do we go from this to that. So I don't know if you've noticed, but we have some problems at the moment and many systems are in decline. And yeah, we're pretty confused and stupid about how to go about our life and how to not waste our resources and how to not destroy our own habitat. So the question really is, how do we go from this burning planet to a more sustainable and regenerative one? And to understand the garden a bit better, we can start with looking at what led to the founding of the garden and what was that journey. And it's very much tied to my own journey. And I started out after school being a bit lost and in what you could describe as an existential crisis, really not knowing what to do with my life, having millions of interests, but not knowing in what way I can really contribute to the world. And it led me to these questions of how can I understand myself, explore myself, and transform myself, and how can I contribute to the world. This led me to meditation and trying to solve these problems from within, looking at my own mind, got deeply into Buddhism and Taoism and the kind of meditative techniques associated with it, like meditation, obviously, but also Qigong, breath work, yoga, and also plant medicine. And also, I studied psychology, neuroscience, and philosophy, looking at it from the outside, kind of from the Western scientific view, looking at the mind and how self-transformation or transformation in general could be possible. And while I was studying psychology and neuroscience and philosophy in Berlin, I also worked at the Max Planck Institute of Social Neuroscience. And at that time, there was a huge study on meditation going on and studying whether we can train qualities like compassion and mindfulness and what happens in the brain, in our behavior, in our hormones, in like many different variables when we practice certain kinds of meditation. And it was a beautiful project with lovely, intelligent people that had very many good results. However, there was one thing that didn't work very well, ultimately, and that's the collaboration within the team. And so that really taught me that when we study compassion and mindfulness, we cannot just study them in the outside, in the participant's brain, but we have to really apply those principles to our own self and our own systems. So seeing the difficulty that well-intentioned, talented people can have collaborating really started me on that journey on how we can create wholesome groups. And yeah, the Mind Foundation I worked at afterwards, and it was also a beautiful project, very interesting people, but I noticed similar group dynamics and wanted to figure out if I want to support inner development and outer development, I need to know how a wholesome group works and wholesome collaborations. So based on that, I trained in coaching, in mediation, and also in organizational development, and really fell in love with sociocracy and some agile methods. Visited a lot of communities, trying to find out what makes a wholesome group. And the third strand that really got me motivated to found the garden or something similar is being confronted with the meta crisis of these many different crises that we're facing at the moment, not knowing how to deal with them and not knowing how to solve them. So the question that got louder and louder is, how can we create healthy communities and also healthy systems? Because our systems at the moment are not very good for creating something that's sustainable and regenerative and life-affirming. So that really got me interested in community building. How does that actually work? We were in community for most of our evolutionary history, but how can we relearn that? How can we intentionally create community? And having done this coaching, mediation, organization development, lots of community building, in theory, I really wanted to test that and find out how that actually works in practice. And a beautiful opportunity opened up in the form of Co-op Space, which is a co-working space that existed already here in Berlin, Kreuzberg. And we came in and we're kind of refounding it with a new vision. And this vision was, how can we create a system that feels safe for people, where people can express themselves, where people can be as they are, where they can support each other, etc. And at the same time, I got introduced to microsolidarity, which is a very, very good system for community building, which looks at what are the variables that need to be in place in order for these wholesome systems to emerge. And all of these different strands went into the founding of the garden. And when we zoom out again to our current situation on this planet, then we need something like a holistic regeneration that covers all of these different levels of inner, of relational, and of systemic regeneration. And thinking of regeneration, for me, that's why the garden is such a powerful image and metaphor and also approach to life, to organizations, to our internal life, that I really felt drawn to the concept and the name and the imagery of the garden, stuff like cultivating, maintaining, growing, nourishing. And looking at especially permaculture and food forest as an ideal, we can see that if you want to create a beautiful, diverse, thriving food forest, you have a systems view, look at the entire system. You have a long-term view and long-term objectives. So of course you also have to look at the short term, but it's really about longer periods of time. And it's about ecosystems and how they can grow. It also thrives on diversity, which is also in the garden, in our garden, an ideal to bring many different people together with different interests, but that are aligned in a similar direction. It's really about learning and research. I come from science and I love the scientific method. So the question is, how can we systematically learn? How can we do this sustainable? And it also aims to create value. In a food forest, you want to produce food to eat. And in the garden, we also want to create value for ourselves, for our groups, and for the world at large. And another ideal that went into the garden is the Garden of Epicurus. Epicurus was a philosopher who founded a school he called the Garden. And his ideal was really to come together with friends, to have good food, to enjoy ourselves. And that this system based on friendship and coming together would yield the best philosophy. And also he accepted women and slaves, which was pretty novel at that time. And another ideal is the Sangha. So in Buddhism, you have the Sangha, which is the spiritual community of people who are interested in spiritual growth. And it's really important for thriving to have other people who are also on the path, who can give you feedback, who can show you your blind spots, who can support you when you're down or when you're doubting, etc. And so this is really also what the garden is about, of having a community of mutual support, of friends. And the thing about gardens is you have to begin with the soil, or the soil is the substrate on which plants can then grow. So in the case of our garden, it's really beginning with a healthy social soil. So how can we create a system that is psychologically safe, that creates a sense of belonging, of being seen, of care, of support? And when you have this kind of a ground that is also rooted and that is kind of infused with these qualities, then can we grow as individuals in beautiful ways. And ultimately, then we can come together to bring our gifts to the world and to co-create a more beautiful world. So that's a bit about the background and the ideals and goals of the garden. And we can go a bit into our projects and There's some projects that we've been running already, and here are some of the core collaborators in these projects, and there's a wider system of supporters. And maybe looking at some of the projects that are already ongoing. One is the Inner Revolution course, which is a course that I've been teaching a couple of times, where we look at ourselves and want to explore ourselves and transform ourselves. So it's a lot on ancient contemplative traditions like Buddhism and Taoism and the meditative techniques associated with them. So lots of meditation and Qigong, but also looking at modern psychology, neuroscience, and philosophy. So combining these Western and Eastern perspectives, you could say. Another one is Becoming Sound, which is an artistic research project combining audio design, chanting, and vibration. And we've had this at various festivals and conferences, for example, the Insight conference from the Mind Foundation. Another strand is community building. So the latest course or learning journey was called Belonging and Purpose, which asks how can we create wholesome group spaces and support each other in bringing our gifts to the world. Another one is looking more at the systems view and asking the question, how can we make our agreements visible, and how can we increase our capacity for sense making, for decision making, and ultimately for collective action. And final one is regenerative teamwork, which is based on a course that I gave last year on how can we collaborate well, how can we work in a sustainable and efficient way. And the latest project is this video series. So this is really about bringing information into the world on topics like consciousness, on inner science and technology, on psychedelics, on breathwork, on community building, on sense making, all of these things. And the next video in the series will be called Revolution is an Inside Job. And there we will dive a bit deeper in some of the topics I already mentioned in this video. So thanks for watching. See you next time. Much love.